Welcome to the WRAL Daily Download. I'm Grace Holland. Nearly 14 years after UNC student Faith Hedgepeth was killed, the man charged with her murder is set to go to trial. Miguel Salquero-Olivares' defense team will now be able to call two out-of-state witnesses after a judge approved two of their motions. WRAL's Monica Casey dug into those documents and joins me now. Monica, thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
So before we get into these motions and everything that's being done heading into this trial, can you catch our listeners up on this case? Who was Faith Hedgepeth?
Yeah, absolutely. This goes back so far. Faith Hedgepeth was a 19-year-old UNC Chapel Hill student. She was originally from Warren County. She was going into her junior year at UNC. She was a biology major, and she was active in Native American events and groups on campus.
And what do we know about her death before police arrested a suspect 9 years after this case started?
This case has been around for so long. I mean, you just mentioned that arrest came 9 years after. And so we had updates throughout the years on this. We know that her roommate and another friend found her body in the morning that day on September in 2012. We know that there were vigils on major anniversaries after her death. The UNC Board of Trustees and even one of the former governors of the state at one point offered money for information in this case. A lot of the major documents, including the 911 calls and the autopsy, a lot of search warrants, were actually sealed by court order in the early years of this case. WRAL and a few other outlets actually went to court to get those unsealed, and those were unsealed in 2014, so about 2 years after Hedgepeth's death. At that time, we learned that the autopsy showed that she had been beaten to death. She had extensive skull fractures. One piece of evidence that came out then as well was what looked to be a white fast food bag that was found on Hedgepeth's bed. There was handwriting on that bag, 3 rows, and it said, "I'm not stupid." It had an expletive on the second line, and the last line said, "jealous." And so it's, all of this started to come out in the years after her death, but it took a long time for the actual arrest to be made in this case.
Right, and we know that came in 2021. That was Salquero-Olivares who was charged in this case. How exactly was he charged, and what created, I guess, the circumstances to charge him then?
So this came 9 years after the murder, probably at a time when a lot of people maybe had forgotten about this case. We continued to speak with her family over the years about their hopes for closure. So he was arrested 9 years after the murder. And at the time, the Attorney General, now our Governor Josh Stein, said that Chapel Hill police submitted a DNA sample to the state crime lab for Miguel Salquero-Olivares, and that matched DNA that was found at the crime scene. That crime scene was in the apartment that Hedgepeth was living in at the time. So Salquero-Olivares was initially charged with first-degree murder, and then as more evidence was tested, he was charged in 2024, 3 years after the initial charge, with burglary, rape, and sexual offense as well. All of that in addition to the first-degree murder charge that he got in 2021.
Okay, let's take a quick break right there. When we come back, we're going to talk about where we are heading into the trial. Welcome back. We've been talking about the Faith Hedgepeth case and the trial that is set to come later this year. Monica, who are these witnesses that Salquero-Olivares' attorneys will now be able to call at trial?
So they're definitely going to have lots of witnesses that we can expect, but these two are of interest because they're out of state, and so they had to file motions to bring these people in from out of state. One of them is Jordan McCrary. He is a former UNC student. He was a student at the time of Hedgepeth's death. He now lives in Washington state, so we know the judge has granted these motions, so he will be coming all the way to North Carolina for trial if the defense defense does decide to call him. The other witness they want to call and that has been approved is Corena Rosario. She was Hedgepeth's roommate at the time of her death, and she now lives in New Jersey. So she may be coming down to North Carolina for this trial as well. Again, it's not definite that they will call these two witnesses, but based on the motions that we've seen, they seem to be crucial to the defense that these attorneys are working to construct for their client.
And what claims do these defense attorneys make about Rosario and McCrary's actions that night of Faith Hedgepeth's death in these documents?
So it's important to remember that these claims are coming from the defense attorneys, and they are working as they should to make the best case that they can on behalf of their client. They are basically arguing in these motions that Corena Rosario, Faith Hedgepeth's roommate at the time of her death, is telling a story that does not add up. They point to a few things that made them think this in their argument to convince a judge to let them bring Rosario here to testify. One of them is that they say Rosario told police the night of Hedgepeth's death. The two had gone out to a club. They had a few drinks. Hedgepeth was sober enough to drive them home, and they got back to the apartment. She told police that she herself, Rosario, was texting and calling people from the bathroom of the apartment from about 3 in the morning until 4:25 in the morning. Now, these defense attorneys argue that Rosario's phone activity doesn't actually take up that much time based on the text messages and the lengths of her calls from that 3 a.m. to 4:25 period. So these defense attorneys argue there is an hour of unaccounted time when Rosario and Hedgepeth were alone in the apartment together. Now, Rosario says she was picked up by Jordan McCrary around 4:25 in the morning, and he took her back to his house. They both have told law enforcement that that's what happened. He came to pick her up, and in her text messages to him, she asked him to pick her up multiple times. She made multiple calls to him as well. These defense attorneys point to the shirt that Rosario was wearing at the club with Hedgepeth earlier that night. That shirt was found next to Hedgepeth's body. Rosario had initially told law enforcement that shirt would be found at McCrary's house. She said she wore it out of the apartment that night. According to these defense attorneys, law enforcement searched McCrary's house a couple times and didn't find the shirt until they realized it's in the crime scene photos, according to these motions, next to Hedgepeth's body. These defense attorneys also point to the fact that they say investigators noticed Rosario had blood on her hand. That was something both she and McCrary told police at the time. And there was a little bit of blood on the bathroom wall where she says she had been sitting, making those calls and writing those texts. These attorneys argue that the final texts from Faith Hedgepeth's phone were actually written and sent by Rosario. The evidence that they point to for that, they point to the timing of the texts from Faith Hedgepeth's phone. The last one was sent at 3:51 in the morning. That would have been before Rosario has said she left the apartment. They also say the text messages sent from Faith Hedgepeth's phone in those early morning hours don't match her usual way of texting, and they say they're closer to the way that Rosario was texting at the time. So these defense attorneys basically say Corena Rosario, Faith Hedgepeth's roommate, has told a contradictory story over the months and the years, and they want to question her on the stand for that. Jordan McCrary is included because he picked her up from the apartment that night, so he has things to say as well, in particular about the blood that they say was on Rosario's hand.
It's certainly a lot of interesting details that the defense is using to create their argument that we expect to hear some of at trial. As you said off the top, this is just an argument at this point. We haven't heard the prosecution side of that, and we'll have to see if we get more insight to that leading up to trial, and certainly when we go to trial. When is the trial set to get started?
As of right now, according to eCourts, this case is set for trial in September of this year, so about 8 months away. And one thing that we have reported on is the reason this case has taken so long. Not only so long to arrest someone, obviously 9 years between the 2012 murder and the 2021 arrest of the defendant, but 2021 to 2026, I mean, it's been almost 5 years since he was arrested. And the prosecution has said in past filings and hearings that one reason it's taking so long is that there's just so much evidence and discovery. It's a 9-year investigation. There is a ton of forensic testing. There's translation that is needed. There is cell phone extractions that they are trying to do. So there is just a lot of evidence to sift through. So that September date, while that's what's in the North Carolina eCourts online court system right now, I would say that it may not be set in stone, just given how long we have been waiting so far and how much there is to get through. I wouldn't be surprised if we may see a motion to delay this trial, but they could be ready in September. We'll just have to wait and see.
All right. Thank you so much, Monica, and thank you for listening to the WRAL Daily Download and for making us part of your morning routine. Another great way to get WRAL news is the Morning Briefing newsletter. That's a daily email with Triangle news, events, and headlines to help you get ready for the day. You can sign up at WRAL.com/newsletter.